Before our meeting begins, we will have an invocation offered by Commissioner Poole, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Before I start, I'd like to take a moment for the community to remember a son that we lost last week and a person and David Bo Rather was a 1969 graduate, Sandusky High School, had a long pro football career with 2 Super Bowl rings, someone who I had the privilege of growing up with, and many of us in the room actually spent time with. We grew up together. David died last week, so we'll take a moment of silence in remembrance of him. Okay, Lord, you have brought us a long way, making our city a better place for the citizens of this community. We'll be making some very important decisions, as we always do. Please guide us to remember and give us the wisdom to remember that we're making decisions for the entire community, and keep us on a steady path of growth for our citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Cresser, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Ms. Lloyd? Here. Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Mr. Murray?
Here.
Mr. Poole?
Here.
Ms. Twine?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes of our meeting of March 26, 2018. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the March 26th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn now to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any of our regular business items tonight, that is the agenda that's before you and the items that we have for consideration as legislation, please step to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and share with us your thoughts, bearing in mind that your comments must be 3 minutes or less. And appreciate Mr. Schwager, you being here.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. This evening representing Save Our Shoreline Parks. The first item is number 2, which is the leasing of the boat ramp building to Block by Block, the Clean and Safe program. Thus far, the city is into that program for $50,000 from last year, and it looks like moving forward another $2,900 annually moving forward. The question I have when you get to that point is there any additional hidden costs to that lease of the building for the boat ramp that the city would incur, whether it be painting, new roof, interior work, whatever have you? The other question is $150 a month seems awful low when in the past people who have run the boat ramp had to pay a monthly fee plus they had to pay for utilities. So that $150 seems awful low. Are we also, by doing this agreement, are we limiting ourselves then into the future for anybody that wants to come in and actually run the boat ramp and use that building for what it was intended? Or is this going to be a one-year agreement where for next year we will find a different location for Block by Block, which comes to mind would be the old State Farm building on Monroe Street, which is owned by the city, and I understand they're moving the rec department into that building. That used to be my former insurance agent. There's probably 5 or 6 different offices in that building, so it might be a good spot for Block by Block moving into the future. The other item is number 4, which is the smoking ban. Did a little bit of research on this over the weekend, as I'm sure Nikki Lloyd has. It looks like if you're 6 feet away from a smoker, you have minimal problems with secondhand smoke. Our current law is 25 feet away from the playground, so certainly that's far enough away from any children, what have you, that would be susceptible to secondhand smoke. Folks, I'm here to tell you, shoreline parks, I spend a lot of time along the shoreline. We got a bigger problem with geese than what we do with cigarette butts. Now, what you may want to look into in the future, you've got 2 weeks to discuss this, if I'm reading the agenda right. You need to come up with some kind of compromise, whether it be a smoking area, a designated smoking area in the parks, something to that effect. Let's do what's right here by everybody. Is smoking a right? Absolutely not. It's called freedom of choice. We still live in America, folks. It's called freedom of choice. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Schwager.
Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. I have to agree with Tim. I don't like smoke. I don't let anyone smoke in my home. I grew up with smokers. They're all gone now. But I don't have the right to sit in a park and tell someone that's on the other side of the park he doesn't have the right to have a cigarette when he's over there with his children, by himself, or she's down on the beach. I would say put out more canisters to put cigarette butts in, but we can't empty the canisters we have with trash in them on the pier or on the other parks. So I guess that wouldn't be a compromise, but I think this is pushing into people's private rights, whatever their options are. They want to kill themselves, that's their problem.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Hello, my name is Erica Coleman. I live at 5214 McCartney Road here in Sandusky. I work with the Ohio Disability and Health Program, which is a CDC-funded health grant, and I also work with the Ohio Department of Health on several tobacco cessation initiatives. I'm also a certified tobacco treatment specialist. I wanted to share some information in support of the Smoke-Free Parks initiative. It is important to recognize that smokers do have the right to smoke. What they don't have the right to do is impede on the rights of people who choose not to smoke or not to breathe in that air. When you have people in the parks and they have their children and they may have asthma, they have other health-related concerns, that secondhand smoke is still affecting them. Smoking is not a one-way street. There are numerous studies that document that secondhand smoke contains the exact same amount of deadly chemicals as those being ingested by the actual smoker. Secondhand smoke, there's no safe level of exposure. It harms absolutely everyone. Secondhand smoke levels in outdoor public areas can reach levels as high as those found in indoor facilities where smoking is permitted. There are many areas in parks where people congregate, such as picnic areas, bleachers, parking lots. People are exposed to secondhand smoke in very close contact. Secondhand smoke odor is detectable at 23 feet away from the source, and irritation levels begin at 13 feet away. Furthermore, if the wind is blowing, anyone who is downwind from secondhand smoke, they're going to be exposed even at significant distances. So just in regard to your comment about the 6 feet, I would be more than willing to share any of the statistical data that you all have questions about, because I just cannot say that that is evidence-based. Litter is another issue that we deal with. Cigarette butts, the actual filters, are the most commonly littered item in the United States. Over 175 million cigarette butts are littered every year. And those cigarette butts they do not decompose. Actually, they do. Let me correct myself. They compose after 15 years. So if littering is a concern of yours, that's something you may want to consider. Beyond that, the cigarette butts are dangerous. They can be ingested by toddlers, pets, birds, fish, any of those. Also, as a community, we want to do what's right. Being smoke-free promotes positive role modeling for our youth, and it protects our children and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcy Platt. I live at 1217 Columbus Avenue. I was really shocked to listen to the comments made by Ms. Lloyd to make it a non-smoking area, the parks. First of all, I believe there's 2 parks she's not allowed to vote on. That would be in the Jack Street Pier, and that would be Shoreline Park, now that you own the other one. The other thing is, when do most people smoke? When they're drinking. And unfortunately, Ms. Lloyd, you own two establishments where people are drinking their bars. So your proprietors probably produce more smoke. And the reason I say this, if you're going to do this, ban the whole downtown then. Because if I'm walking on the street with my kid and your people are standing outside their bar smoking, where do I go then? I'm supposed to walk in the street? Where am I supposed to go? Okay, I have a choice in a park. I have never seen 2 people in a park fight over somebody standing too close to another because of cigarette smoke. We cannot even get the city, and I just saw the budget, and I saw you guys all approve it, and you approved 2 more people for economic development, not 1 person to take care of the parks. And what is the second complaint in the city of Sandusky? First one is potholes. Number two would be the condition of the parks. So you can go, I think this commission should spend more time trying to make sure that their parks are funded and taken care of than the few people they're going to see smoking a cigarette on the side. The other question is, I'm a licensed independent social worker. I work with people all the time on trying to stop smoking. It's not easy because the cigarettes that everybody started smoking in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, those don't even contain the same compounds they do now. It's a difficult thing for someone to stop smoking. I deal with people all the time trying to stop that addiction. Would you stop people addicted to other things down there? Maybe it's good for them to get some clean air. The 25-foot should stay. You're overreaching. I also have another on the regular agenda. Mr. Murray, you assured me that the sidewalks around the new middle school were going to be taken care of by the Safe Schools project. I see no sidewalks going in east of Hayes Ave. We talked about how that might have been okay for the high schoolers to go over to the high school and not have sidewalks, but now you're talking about middle school people. And I know that you just approved an awful lot of money for Cedar Point to take some land over, and we're going to pay $250,000? Is it $435,000? Some number out there. I think the least we could do is give our middle school children sidewalks to walk to school on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Platt.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I'm Mike Meinster from 413 Cove Street, Sandusky, Ohio. And I follow the smoking ban a little bit, and I think it's a good idea to limit smoking. I was raised in a house of people that smoked. My grandparents smoked, my aunts and uncles smoked, my sister smoked, my mom smoked. You know, like somebody else said before, most of them are dead, and they're dead from heart disease and lung disease, and they have emphysema and all these horrible things. There's a time in my 20s where I did smoke a little bit. When I got to my job, everybody that I worked with smoked. And after we'd have a job, they'd hand you a cigarette. So it just got to be a point where when I was a young man, I tried it for a while. You know, you get sicker than hell when you first try smoking it, and then after a while, you get up to 3 packs a day. But I think that when I drive by the police station out here, Buddha's going to be mad at me. But I drive by out here and I see the firefighters and the police officers smoking, and I see the hospital workers, especially out on the sidewalk smoking outside the hospital. That just sends a terrible message to some of the youth in the community, and they're very vulnerable. You see a lot of young kids without role models or identity things going on with them, but I think that it's be best if you can keep that out of the public areas, out of the bike paths, out of the parks, out of the wherever they go. Because I take my grandchildren down to the parks regularly. I actually walked 3 of them down there. The oldest one was 3 yesterday down to the parks, and it was pretty cold. But I go down there a lot, and I really don't care for them to see people standing around smoking and acting like that and giving them an image. I hope by the time they're old enough, smoking will be something that doesn't even happen in the USA. It costs us a lot of health care. And if you ever have been in the hospital, I've worked in healthcare for a while, and you see these people and they can't breathe, and they're just on 6-8 liters of oxygen. They're sitting on the edge of their bed, and they're dying, and they're just still need a cigarette. They got a pack of cigarettes in their socks. I know it's tough, but if you can get that out of the kids' minds early, it might. The litters, I mean, it's going to be hard to enforce. I don't know how Chief Forzak decides how he can enforce it, but maybe just by embarrassing the people and letting them know that this isn't acceptable to most of society, that might be the route to go. So I just want to say that I'm for anything you can do to drive the smoking out of public areas. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Robin Hudnall. I reside at 511 West Washington Street. I own a business at 124 Columbus Avenue, downtown Sandusky. I'm speaking on behalf of the smoking ban. I'll let you know I'm a smoker. I've been a smoker most of my life. I have 4 children, 15 and 3 beautiful 4-year-olds. You know, I heard you talk about smokers' rights, but what about parental rights? Like, I have the right to not have my children exposed to smoke. That is why I do not smoke in my house. I do not smoke in my cars. When we go to these parks, I've watched my daughters as toddlers pick up cigarette butts, go to put them in their mouth, because guess what? I have triplets, okay? Kind of hard to keep them all round up. Picking up cigarette butts, littering in our communities, our parks. You do not see, and I heard the alcohol, I heard about smoking out in front of bars. Well, I don't take my children to bars. Okay, my children go to parks. There are age limits on that. That is their own rights that are going to bars and whatnot. When we're talking about banning it out of the parks, what about alcohol? Alcohol is a legal substance too, but you are only allowed to drink it at certain locations, places that have liquor licenses, okay? So I'm not understanding why all the controversy, because as a parent, it is my parental right to protect my children. Even from myself, I am a smoker. So I stand for the smoking ban.
Thank you, Ms. Hudnall.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Wertenbach, and I work at the Erie County Health Department. I'm the Director of Community Health there, 420 Superior Street. I wanted to share some statistics, as one of our jobs at the local health department is to assess the health of our community, just to be sure that everyone is aware. In Erie County, it is assessed that 20% of our adults are smokers, so 80% are not. 19% of our youth currently are reporting that they're using e-cigarettes. 7% of our youth have admitted to smoking sometime between 6th grade and 12th grade. Another percentage I think is important. Of the 20% of our adults that are current smokers, 40% have tried to stop smoking because they want to quit. And as someone prior to me said, it is a very difficult thing to do. I think with this policy, this ordinance, and I applaud just this conversation, because this is a community conversation that needs to be had. Ms. Lloyd, thank you for proposing the original ordinance and then bringing this back again to the table, because it's important. I think it is an excellent time to choose healthy living, to help our residents and our visitors make some healthier choices, and as was mentioned several times before, for our children. There are no children in this room. They can't speak on behalf of themselves, but I can tell you, as an educator going into the schools and teaching prevention education, specifically tobacco education, I hear time and time and again students saying, I understand, I'm going to commit to not smoking, but will you please help my parents? How can I help my parents? So I think it's important, and the children aren't here to speak, so we must speak on their behalf. Also, it was brought up role modeling. I think that is critical. We're saying that, it's okay to smoke here but not here because you're not really close to the playground equipment. It's sending a message to our children. Tobacco takes lives every single day, and that was already brought up. We have an opportunity to create policy that will help and save lives, no different than years past with our seatbelt laws. It was a contentious topic. People did not want their rights taken and not to use seatbelts. We have saved thousands upon thousands of lives because of that seatbelt policy, and I parallel this evening to that. So I thank you for your efforts. I would add one encouragement. As I mentioned, 19% of our youth are using e-cigarettes. I would encourage the commission this evening to consider to add that to the ordinance as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wertenbach. Sir, if you wish to speak, step to the mic. Sir, if you wish to speak, you can step to the microphone. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Stelzer. I'm with the Erie County Health Department, Environmental Health Division. And One of my passions has always been children's environmental health, and I've worked with some of you. I recognize faces for working for providing lead-safe housing in the community. I've done some school environmental health inspections with some of you. And another hat that I wear at the health department is our tobacco grant. Our community health assessment showed the need for the goal of having reduced tobacco exposure in our community. So part of that goal has caused us to form a tobacco coalition. So some of the things our tobacco coalition does is work with different groups that want to move forward with smoke-free policy. So this could be in housing, it could be outdoor, in schools, any agency that's looking to move forward with smoke-free policy. We try to give them model policy and different tools to move forward with that. So I gave each of the commissioners a brochure, and on the front you'll see a picture of a tobacco-free sign. This picture was taken at Strickfaden Park in Perkins. Perkins adopted a smoke-free policy for all their outdoor spaces last June without any resistance. I also want to encourage the commissioners, when you look for different resources or information, that you use reliable resources. So on the back, we've got some good websites for tobacco statistics as far as Ohio Department of Health, CDC, and then some of the statistics that Jeannie talked about are in the Erie County Community Health Assessment, and that's also on the Erie County Health Department's website if you'd like to look at those. So please look over this brochure, consider the health effects that secondhand smoke has on children, and once again, we also want to encourage use, including the e-cigarettes. If you would look over this fact sheet, it talks about including electronic cigarettes as part of your tobacco-free policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Simmons. I am here representing the Erie County Minority Health Task Force, and I stand here in support of the smoking ban. My concern is that in Erie County, 31% of African Americans are smokers versus 19% of other people. To me, that's a huge difference. I recognize that asking people to not smoke places where they're accustomed to smoking can be seen as imposing or impinging upon their rights. I understand that not smoking at all when you're accustomed to doing it is very difficult. I am a licensed professional clinical counselor, so I understand working with addictions. My concern is for our young people. The statistics have shown that the biggest sign, the strongest sign of whether or not our children are likely to move on to drugs and alcohol is whether or not they started smoking. It's not their use of marijuana, it's their use of tobacco. And that's my concern. Yes, the Minority Health Task Force is concerned about minorities of all types. However, if we can prevent some of our children from smoking in the first place, then all of us are going to be healthier. All of the statistics that have already been spoken about from the Erie County Health Assessment, it's there. We all know the challenges that come from smoking and secondhand smoke, so I don't need to recite those. I'm standing here on behalf of our children, on all of our children, and looking forward to all of us having better health. As the president of the Minority Health Task Force, for some of you, the fact that the task force even exists is news. So I'm excited to be able to present myself and the task force to you in support of something that I consider so important for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons.
Hi, my name's Trini Lopez, 4707 Venice Road. For everyone here trying to blame us smokers for your kids smoking, They have choices. I didn't smoke until I got older. My father told me, boy, I catch you smoking, I'll knock your teeth down your throat. That was good parenting. Don't blame us, because you're bad parents. Teach your kids. Teach your kids. Raise your kids correctly. And I don't know where she gets her statistics at, but I've never been asked any questions about smoking or anything, ever. I think it's wrong. We have rights. As long as you're using our tax dollars to fund places like this, we still have rights to do, smoke in these parks. She said 23 feet away was bad. It's 25 feet away. It should be all right as it stands now. It's proven fact with her. She said 23 feet. The band's 25 foot. Why are we even talking about it? Another thing is, they keep on saying secondhand smoke kills, secondhand smoke kills. A lot of things kill. A lot of things. They put drugs in your food that kill and give you cancer. Why aren't we bitching about that? Officers kill innocent people every day with their guns and weapons. Why aren't we talking about that? There's more important things to talk about. You get killed by a gun, you're dead today, not 50 years down the line. And the issue on the potholes, who do I turn my slips into for the money I had to pay to get my truck fixed? I had tie rods and ball joints and I need tires and everything. It cost me a lot of money because of your roads that we paid for. I want to know, who do I turn in these slips so I can get my money back? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else present wishing to address the commission?
Hi, Jude Guerra, 882 Cross Tree Lane, Sandusky, Ohio. I stand up here tonight in support of the smoking ban. I think everybody knows it's not news that smoking is bad for you. People who smoke typically are addicted. A lot of people wish they didn't smoke. I think the city is just doing another thing to curb an addiction. It'd be great if our future generations, if smoking was so socially unacceptable, and I think this is one way to get towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra.
Aaron Jacobs, 606 Wayne Street. I've come today to support the ban on smoking. As a parent, I don't like for my son to be exposed to it. I have a pregnant wife. I don't want her exposed to it. It shouldn't be in the parks and that type of thing. People should be able to breathe easily. That's why I was outlawed in bars and things like that. This is just taking that a step further. Also to help clean up the lake, because we won't have as much litter in the parks either. So, for these few simple things, this change could go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Anyone else present who wishes to, please, that's up. No, this is for all the agenda items tonight.
My name's Tommy McDonald, 506 East Adams Street. The smoking ban is up in the air there. I used to smoke. I quit cold turkey because my kids was putting cigarette butts in their mouths too. And where I work at IEC, you can't even walk in the front of the building without smelling that stench. But anyway, and I support the ban. But I'm here because of Warren Street, where I grew up as a kid at 9 years old. I was there when the railroad tracks was there. I've been a homeowner since I was 24 years old down there. I've talked to every mayor that's been there since Sizemore, Darton, Valley, every one of them. I stopped there and complained about that street. Mr. Waddington, the only commissioner here I know that's been out there physically picking up trash, because people just throw trash down there because this road looks horrific. And that's all the city's talking about, is fixing the cove and fixing the waterfront and fixing this. But I want to submit some pictures to your clerk so that you guys can see what this street looks like. It's horrific. I've been a homeowner down there. My mom's taxes are $1,800 a year. Mine's are $1,400 a year. And I talked to the city engineer. He told me just a small percent of that goes to the city. I understand that, but I'm paying to the county, and it's just horrific. If anybody goes down from Monroe Street to Water Street on Warren Street, you know what I'm talking about. And it's a dumping ground for anybody who goes, because it looks like it looks terrible. It looks like the projects in Detroit. And it's horrific. And this is my first time getting here. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And I want you guys to drive by there if you haven't. And it's a shame before the Lord that street looks like that. And I'd like to see something done about it. And even if I got to get out, Mr. Waddington knows what I'm talking about. And I talked to Mr. The engineer upstairs there, Jeff Keefe, I think his name is. And he told me today, I'm a little nervous here. I'm not used to talking in front of everybody. But that only thing they were going to do is fill those potholes again like they've been doing for 37 years and do a Duralast, whatever the hell that is. And that and that street's not on the list for the 5-year plan. And why not? Drive down there and take a look at it and tell me why not. And there's a lot of bad streets in Sandusky, but that street is awful. And I moved back here after taking care of my mom for 6 years. She died, and me and my wife decided to stay here and live. And I'm fixing my house. Take a look at my house on 506 East Warren Street. I'm trying to fix it, and that street is horrific, and I deserve better as a taxpayer. They pulled those tracks out of there when I was a kid. Between the city and the railroad people, they need to do something about that. And then as tourists come through there, in the summertime, you got all these signs that go downtown. But when them people come down Monroe Street, they see that water from Warren Street. You see that more vividly than you do the other direction. And they come that way, and we got to give them directions. And they got to see that ugly road as they tour our city. And I think it's horrific. Thank you.
Mr. McDonald, thank you for being here. Folks, this is only to address issues on the regular agenda. Mr. McDonald is a first-time visitor to my recollection, so I let him go on about a non-agenda item. Thank you for being here, sir. I do want to encourage people to come down and speak their mind, as you have tonight. Yes, sir.
Hi, Kyle Johnson. I reside at 2020 Campbell Street. I am here against the smoking ban. I think when it comes down to voting to this, we need to think of things in long term. And one of my passions is fishing, and I'm going to use that as an example. If you look at the number of fishermen that smoke versus the number of fishermen that don't smoke, the smokers heavily outweigh the non-smokers. If fishermen from out of this town venture here to use the recreational use of our downtown facilities and our waterfront, if there's a no smoking, they're not going to come, which in the long run is costing this city, and not only the city, but the ODNR, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. People buy fishing licenses every year. All that money that's going toward the fishing license goes into a fund from the ODNR for fish hatcheries and much other wildlife things. Without people buying fishing licenses, there's no money. And I just think it's, in hindsight, ridiculous. And Miss Lloyd, not to throw you under the bus or anything, but seeing that you own 2 establishments downtown that have ashtrays right outside the doors, knowing that people smoke, and knowing that they are within violation of the Ohio law on the smoking ban, I mean, that's just absurd, in my personal opinion. Bars do allow smoking, but they have to be in a patio, such as Daly's or the Crowbar. They have outdoor patios in which, by the Ohio law, you are allowed to smoke in. I just wish that people would vote on things that matter. You know, I'm a 26-year-old father. I became a father at 20 years old. I'd take my daughter down to the park to play all the time. I go down there to fish all the time. If I am down the north end of Shoreline Park fishing on the rocks, I should be able to light up and enjoy my cigarette while my kid is playing at the park or while other people are playing far away from me. You know, it's not right. You know, smoking isn't a right. It's a privilege and a choice, and I think that's something that shouldn't be taken away from us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Others present wishing to address the commission on any agenda items? No, we'll just speak once, and that's enough. If you wish to submit something to the commission, send it to Mrs. Cresser, and she'll make sure the commission gets it. Thank you. If not, then we have a presentation tonight from the Ohio Secretary of State's office, and we are very happy to have Katie Simo here with us. The Secretary of State's office has chosen to give the city a special designation. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi, yes, definitely. Thank you. My name is Katie Simo. I'm with the Ohio Secretary of State's office and the regional liaison out here in Erie County. And here tonight we are presenting the city of Sandusky a commendation for being awarded and everything for Site Selection Magazine's top 2017 Site Selection Magazine's top micropolitans in the country. And so I will just read a little bit of the commendation. The certificate of commendation is tendered on behalf of the people of the state of Ohio as a small token of their sincere gratitude and admiration for your exemplary achievement. Throughout your hard work and dedication to developing a favorable business climate in your community, you have earned this coveted recognition. So congratulations to the city of Sandusky.
Thank you.
Could we get a picture with maybe the commissioner?
Sure.
You can come around here if you want. You want to get... Where do you want her, Kelly?
Better.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no,
I think there was a part way around.
Okay. Why don't you step right up here?
Thank you all so much for having me. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you. And next, our own Talon Floor is here to talk who is our neighborhood outreach coordinator, is here to talk to us about the reconstitution of the Sandusky Youth Commission.
All right. Thank you, Commission President, and the rest of the commission for giving me a few minutes just to update you guys on what we have going on with the Youth Commission. So just a little bit of background. In 2017, the City Commission asked our law department to look at the existing boards and commissions. And one of the things that they found when they looked at them was that we had a youth commission on the books, but it had very specific makeup and had actually never convened or met. So the commission kind of tasked staff with reviving a youth commission because it's obviously something that's really needed in our city. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So after that instruction, we reached out to all the youth organizations in the city and had actually several residents that reached out and that were really interested in helping our youth. And we just started a discussion with them on what kind of organization we should have for our youth. And that's kind of what got us to the structure that we have today. So we are thinking about this would start at the start of the next school year, but 9 students, all either residing or attending school within the city of Sandusky, who would meet on a bi-weekly basis throughout the school year. This group would be selected by a selection committee, which would be a group composed of representatives from each collaborating organization, those being Sandusky, the city of Sandusky, Sandusky City Schools, St. Mary's Central Catholic, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Erie County, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Erie County Community Foundation. We're all part of the discussion. So they would select the kids going into next school year. Kind of the program purpose, there's three real purposes of the Sandusky Youth Commission as I see it. One, collaboration. So there's not currently an organization where all youth groups can go and collaborate, let each other know what's going on, plan for the future. So that would be one aspect. Leadership would be the second aspect. So students would get to lead by examining youth issues facing today's youth and forming committees and subcommittees based upon that and ways to address them. But also they would go through a program which would run through the majority of the school year that would look pretty similar to what Leadership Erie County does. So basically we would take them to various institutions around the city, tour them, and also let them do a question and answer session with leaders in those organizations. And then finally, service. The students would work together on a group project, on an improvement project within one of our neighborhoods, and also perhaps get involved with neighborhood cleanups and all that good stuff that we have going on through the school year and the summer. So student selection is scheduled to take place over the next 2 months. We will have the applications available at the school as well as here at the city. And we will be ready to hit the ground rolling at the start of the 2018-2019 school year. So I'd field any questions you guys have. But besides that, that's where we're at, and I'm very excited about the opportunities that the next school year will bring us for our youth in the community. So.
Thank you, Mr. Floor, and I'll open up to the commissioners in just the rest of the commissioners in just a moment. I would like to know at some point, maybe you have some thoughts tonight, maybe you will develop these as this program unfolds as to how the city commission will interface with the youth commission. Maybe it's the kind of thing where they want to submit a report periodically. Maybe it's the kind of thing where you might invite different commissioners from time to come speak to the youth commission. Just your thoughts on that?
I think it could be all of the above. We really kind of envisioned them working, or I kind of envisioned them working in an advisory role, so that if they really saw something that they saw going on or some way that they thought the actual commission could help youth, that they could run that up the flagpole to you guys. But I also think it would be great if we could get them to a meeting, introduce them to the community, each of the students selected, and so that they get a good grasp of the public process as well going in our city.
Good, all of the above. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Klein.
Talon, thank you for putting this together. I think it's a great idea to engage our youth in the community. They need to be exposed to different things that they might not otherwise be exposed to. We have great students and young people in this community, so giving them an opportunity to see how businesses run, how city government runs, I think that's a great opportunity, so thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Poole.
Yes, also thank you. I know you've touched on the larger groups that represent kids. Are there not other smaller organizations that are youth-oriented organizations? How are we interfacing with them?
So there are, definitely. I think that there are more in the community, and what I would say is we would definitely, I envision these meetings being a place where all groups can come. So if you have something to say on youth, then you can come and share your views on it. So I would think that we'd really encourage all youth groups to come, regardless of size.
And in starting this, have groups like Rev. Robinson's Acorns been involved in your discussion?
So I have not spoken with him specifically about this program, but I think that would be a good person to get involved for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Poole raises a good point to the extent there are other youth contacts that the commissioners have to suggest. You might just send Mr. Floor an email and let him know.
Please.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
My only comment is I think we're all aware that we have the right person in you, Talon, heading this up. The encouragement, how I see this really getting off the ground is for you to simply expose to these potential candidates for this commission what you have done with your life and the education that you've gotten and the position that you've attained here with the city and the things that we've entrusted to you. I know from firsthand knowledge that you have taken every one of them and run straight forward with them. You make a great model for this, so I'm glad you're taking this on. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Commissioner. I hope I'm half as good as you say I am.
I see you're blushing.
That's right.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd.
Talon, I'm excited to see where you take the Youth Commission. You have a very passionate group of people that you've been working with and attending some of those meetings. I think it's also a great opportunity for the other projects you're working on to integrate the Youth Commission into those as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Flora, for all that you're doing, but don't let your head get too big. And with that, would someone care to make a motion to accept the communications from staff
So
recommending
moved.
legislation? Been a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any of the commissioners would like to have placed on the regular agenda? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the commission. Item A is a new D5I liquor permit for Heaven Fund 2 LLC, 101 East Water Street. Item B is an ordinance to dispose of unneeded city property. Item C is for ratification of a grant application to the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. Item D is the ratification of a grant application to the United States Department of Homeland Security. And item E is the ratification of a grant application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd,
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda and declaring that all ordinances and/or resolutions A through E as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions A through E, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
been a motion and second discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Flora?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
And now on the ordinances and resolutions, please.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes,
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Klein? Yes. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
those are all adopted. Item number 1 on our regular agenda, please.
Item number 1 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $15,000 through the Housing Development and Beautification Grant Program to Window Holdings Limited in relation to the property located at 221 East Water Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
I
Waddington.
move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I see that Mr. and Mrs. Window are in the audience, and I wonder if they have any comment to make regarding this?
My brother and I.
Could you step up there, please, Mr. Window, so the folks at home can hear you well as well, please?
Yes, my brother and I did a building downtown a year or two ago, and everything went very well. It was a team organization, and we decided that we sold our business that my wife and I and his wife and him would like to live downtown, and therefore we made the investment to do this project. We appreciate the support we get from the city, not just one department, but Mr. Klein and the engineering and the building department. And Mr. Brady's always available to me if I have a question or who I need to see or what order I should go in. So the climate is correct to make these investments. I'm really excited about the downtown, and that's why we're investing our funds in it. And I think within the next 60 days, you'll see a mammoth change at 221 East Water Street, because we've done a lot of the inside work when the weather is bad. And I think you have a picture of the project, and the back of the building's coming off, and it's going to be all redone. And when the back comes off, you kind of look inside and see what we've accomplished. And my wife asks me every week if we're going to move by the weekend. Every week I say, no, honey, not quite. But we'd hope to complete it in 18. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Window. Commissioners, questions or comments? We do appreciate your investment in the community, Mr. Window. Ms. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Twine? Yes. Mr. Brady?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 2, please.
Item 2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Block by Block Incorporated of Louisville, Kentucky for the lease of the building located at the Shelby Street Boat Launch Ramp Facility and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Lasko, perhaps you could give us a little bit of background on this and address a couple of the questions that were asked earlier about this legislation.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, members of the commission and the public. I think we were here several months ago when the city had entered into agreement to provide grant proceeds to downtown Sandusky Incorporated for the pilot project, the Clean and Safe pilot project to be piloted in downtown Sandusky in summer of 2018. We knew that given the staffing levels of block by block, they would need to find a home to sort of serve as a hub for their operation. Their staff of 3 or 4 individuals that will sort of meet in the morning and to have some office space for their operations. Through that, we identified the facility at the Shelby Street Boat Ramp. The terms of the lease, which we'll get to answering some of Mr. Schwanger's questions as well, it is only for calendar year 2018. The monthly fee that would be due to the city is $150 per month, payable in 2 equal installments of $600, which would basically cover the cost of the utilities, basically the electric at the facility. They will be responsible for separately metering and paying for the water usage that they'd be utilizing. Also, to answer one of Mr. Schwanger's questions, there's no additional improvements that the city would be undertaking to make that space feasible for them. They are accepting the space in its as-is condition. Again, that is basically the terms of the agreement. And what I would mention as well, this is not uncommon to what the city has entered into in the past, depending on the facility, whether it be Great Lakes Grinders, where the rent has basically been modest for us to be able to have an operational entity overseeing and maintaining city facilities down along the shoreline.
Thank you, Mr. Lasko. Commissioners, questions or comments? Mr. Harris.
Through you, Commissioner President, to answer one more question that Mr. Schwanger had as well. Victoria's not here, but we did send this out for RFP last year for someone to run the boat launch service. We got one response back. We weren't able to reach terms, so it has been proposed to utilize it as a boat launch ramp, but no one basically qualified responding to the RFP.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. Questions or comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, with regard to money and investment in this block by block, I'm under the impression about $2,900 for the taxable portion of the downtown properties. Is there, and I'm not dickering over the amount, it's roughly plus or minus that. What I'm interested in, this is an additional expense, so to speak, an additional thing we're doing for these folks. Is there any more money other than what has been presented that we're going to have to later on find out is another thing we need to do to make this work?
Through the Commission President to Commissioner Poole, this actually, in agreement, does not relate necessarily to the assessment process, which you're talking about, which would be for 2019 forward. This is just for the pilot project, of which all the city's funding is identified as the $50,000 that was made as a grant in the previous year. We'll actually receive revenue for this, not expend revenue, as we'll be receiving rent for the facility. Obviously, if we wanted to continue this in future years, that would also be revenue to the city. But to your point, as of right now, there is no planned investment from the city into a clean and safe program should an improvement district be created and choose to invest in that program beyond whatever the city's share of that with assessment would be, which I believe was around somewhere between $2,400 and $2,900 to your recollection. So.
Okay, just one more, just a clarification. This lease is not the same as we do with grinders. With grinders, they are doing a service that they provide for the community, which we don't pay them for. We've got $50,000 tied up in this now. In addition to giving a sweetheart deal on rent, for them to make, this is a money-making, built-in money-making business for these folks. So although perhaps you got your votes to make it acceptable, it's not the same thing. Grinders makes it or breaks it on whether or not he sells enough product. This is built in, and we gave him $50,000 on the front end.
Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No?
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
Item 3 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement for professional design services with K.E. McCartney and Associates Incorporated of Mansfield, Ohio, for the Safe Routes to School project, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Klein, could you walk us through this process, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Through Mr. President, this program that ODOT runs, the Safe Routes to Schools program, is one of the best programs that they operate. It's 100% funded by ODOT, and it provides for those safe pedestrian opportunities to get to various schools. One of the key components is to have a plan, Safe Routes to Schools plan. And the project that is being funded under this application, which was submitted by the Planning Department in 2016, was for curb ramps, 1,700 feet of sidewalk along Camp Street. The entire project is between Hayes and Camp, south of Pierce. It includes curb ramps, pedestrian signals, some sidewalks, and just various striping improvements to make it safer. That portion of the project was included in the Safe Routes to Schools plan. There have been discussions internally about potentially updating that plan and going after projects in the future, whether that plan would incorporate projects such as the portion east of the middle school, the proposed elementary schools, the various schools throughout the city is what we would need to update to make sure that we can go after those future applications. Unfortunately, with an ODOT project, we do not foresee breaking ground until 2020 because of the planning process and all the other hurdles that we have to go through. So it is a 2-year process before we can break ground.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. Questions or comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
To put this, Mr. Klein, into perspective, would it be accurate to say that we budget $100,000 a year for sidewalks, and through your efforts and through the Safe Route to Schools program, we're going to get $285,000 worth of improvements in the next year and a half, 2 years?
Through you, Mr. President, I would say that it's through the efforts mostly of the planning department. We're simply implementing the project for the application that they submitted. But yes, that's exactly what it is.
It's a big win for this city to almost triple our sidewalk budget, is the point that I'm making. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments, commissioners? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Item number 4 is a first reading of an ordinance amending Part 5 General Offense Code, Chapter 521 Health, Safety, and Sanitation, Section 521.101 Smoking Prohibited at City Parks of the codified ordinances of the City of Sandusky in the manner and way specifically set forth here and below.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance at the first reading.
Second.
Then a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I listened to a lot of this tonight. I did field a few phone calls and talked to some residents. But I guess I question myself on this. Is there anybody in this room or in Sandusky that hasn't been harmed by smoking or secondhand smoke, either through a family member or a friend? And that's quite obvious. And then I worry about in the parks, the kids breathing secondhand. What choice do they have if you're a 7, 8-year-old kid and you're a parent in the park? You may be disconnected and they're running around the park and there's somebody smoking. And it's proven secondhand smoke is dangerous. So I will be supporting.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lloyd.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight to express your opinions on this. There's some strong opinions on both sides. I am voting yes on this legislation. I am for healthy communities. That's one thing that we are trying to create in this area. I understand that smokers have the right to smoke, but I don't believe you have the right to infringe upon other people who don't want to be around smoking.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Lockhart.
I've listened to everybody in this room, and I've listened to a lot of people outside of this room. I've fielded a few phone calls myself. I've gotten thousands of comments online. And the vast majority of the people that I've spoken to are against this ban. You know, it's more than just smoking. There's a few people in this room that are making a decision for all the people that live in this city and visit the city. You know, and I appreciate everybody's opinions on both sides, because it matters. And that's why I believe this is something that the voters should decide rather than us in this room. This is an issue that everyone should know about. Everyone should know about. Because the unsuspecting that'll come into the parks or wherever they are will be affected by this, one way or the other. So I myself am a non-smoker, grew up with a smoker. In an enclosed space, it's difficult to get away from someone. But with this, you know, when they talk about rights, we have the right to do anything that's legal. And currently, it is legal to smoke. To walk in a park, it's legal to smoke. So what we're talking about is restricting that right that we have now, a legal right to smoke. So it's not about litter. It's not about just smoking. You know, it's about what do we have the right to do or not, and what the people should say, what the people should vote on. Because I'm going to tell you something. The first people to be affected by this is the average person that walks in the park. That's who's going to be affected by this. So no matter what we do in this room, most of us, I mean, I go to mostly all the parks in this city. I don't know if all of you do or have not. We've got parks that are 10 acres, maybe even 40 acres, I think, in some of them. I could be wrong, but they're pretty large. I was approached by a veteran yesterday, and the veteran said to me, you know, he wants somebody to stand up for his rights because he fought for this country, and that he comes back home and he can't have a cigarette when he goes down to the water and decompress. And I said, I understand, but here's what I see. I see that it's an opportunity for everybody to be involved in this process. I believe that smokers have rights and so do non-smokers. So when you say that one doesn't have the right or the over, it's not correct. It's called equality, and that's why we put it out to the majority and let them vote.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
so I'd just like to say I appreciate Commissioner Waddington's comments. I lost 3 grandparents to smoking, and I've done a lot of research over the last couple weeks, and I've fielded phone calls, and I've had a lot of conversations with just random residents that I've run into. And after going over in more detail what the smoking ban entails, a lot of them have come around and appreciated the efforts that we're making. Just to give a couple of the items that I ran across, the National Recreation and Parks Association in 2016 stated that municipal governments have been passing ordinances banning smoking in public parks and on public beaches. More than 1,260 municipalities have tobacco-free park laws on the books. It includes big cities like Boston, LA, Houston, small towns like Jasper, Alabama, Wellington, Colorado, Sylvania, Ohio, the Parks and Rec director out of Houston said they needed help ensuring that we had the tools to prevent a range of antisocial behavior in our parks. The smoking ban gave us the chance to work with our staff and the public health community to ensure all of Houston had access to safe and clean parks. Moving on to the Ohio Department of Health, Ohio municipalities and counties with smoke-free laws. Strongsville, Ohio adopted a tobacco-free campus in 2013. Athens County, tobacco-free parks effective December of 2014. Cleveland banned smoking in outdoor city-owned or controlled areas, including parks, in June of 2011. Cleveland Zoo went smoke-free in January of 2011. The city of Grandview also prohibits smoking in parks and recreational facilities, and this was sometime before October 2015. Marysville was tobacco-free in October 2013. Oakwood tobacco-free and e-cigarette-free parks in the city and all city property effective November of 2014. Oberlin added e-cigarettes to their public smoking ban in June of 2014. Village of Lincoln Heights, all properties smoke-free in May of 2010. Village of Woodlawn adopted a policy in 2011 that stated all tobacco products are banned from indoor and outdoor facilities and all properties of Village of Woodlawn. Grove City also voted on a smoking ban in all parks in February of 2016, and locally Perkins Township went smoke-free in their city, in their township parks a year ago. So this is not new legislation, it's not a new idea. This is Sandusky trying to catch up with the times. A lot of the information that was brought up today, I really appreciate everyone talking on both sides of it, because that's what we need. We need a conversation to let the community know that this is a very, very important topic. So smoke-free parks are here for you to promote healthy living. So creating smoke-free parks is a way for communities to make outdoor spaces a more conducive and healthy environment. It's a place where people can expect to be free from secondhand smoke. And secondhand smoke, there is absolutely no safe level, and that comes from the CDC. Smoke-free environments, this was already said tonight, but I think it's just something to reiterate, is it helps adults model healthy behavior for kids, and it can also encourage people who do smoke already to smoke less or to quit. And it was also said tonight that most people that do smoke don't want to smoke. They just have a very hard time with facing that addiction, and if we have a supportive community, maybe we can help some of those stop. Personal rights have been brought up multiple times. Local governments do have a legal right to adopt laws to protect residents when it comes to their health and safety, and I don't think that we need to just take the right, but we need to take on the responsibility of it. Smoking restrictions do not discriminate against people who smoke. There's no constitutional guarantee for that, and someone tonight said that it is a privilege, and it is. It is legal to smoke, and every smoker has a right to smoke, but it's also legal to drink alcohol, and I know it was mentioned that I do own a couple businesses that do supply that, but it's not allowed in parks, and we don't condone it in front of children. A big thing is littering. So 175 million pounds of cigarette butts every single year come from Americans. That's so sad. Like, think about how much would it fill the room? Think about how light a cigarette butt is, and it takes so long to decompose. I do my best. I do have cigarette butt containers outside of my businesses because I try and curtail the littering is the best that I can. Let's see here. And the craziest thing is tobacco smoke contains more than 7,000 chemicals and compounds, including hundreds that are toxic, and at least 69 cause cancer. The U.S. Surgeon General has concluded there's no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke causes nearly 3,000 deaths from lung cancer and 46,000 deaths from heart disease every year in the United States. So even if we had a designated area, when the wind blows, the 25 feet goes right out the door. And if your children's going to a playground and playing on just the playground, at some point, if there is a restroom available, they are going to need to use it. And the restroom is not 25 feet within the playground. And whoever said we have more important things like the geese. I agree with the geese. Let's work on that next. But let's see here. So another thing to think about is how are we going to enforce it? Most laws restricting smoke-free parks are self-enforcing. People police themselves and will cooperate with the law. And a knowledgeable community member can also educate those who know about the law. So please understand, I'm proposing this legislation because I think it's important to offer a healthy, active lifestyle, which is important for all of us and our future generations.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I also have listened to different people, and I appreciate folks coming in with their opinion. I generally try to make decisions, make a balanced decision on the facts, and I listened. One of the folks that came to the podium questioned whether or not Mr. Schwanger's contribution came from an actual academic study, and I'd just like to pass on that it came from a Stanford report called Exposure to Secondhand Tobacco Smoke in Outdoor Settings. It's a risk study, and it showed, as he said, and I'll add to it more than just what he said, if you're in a sidewalk well, I'm sorry, I've switched studies. Essentially, if you move 6 feet away, that you minimize to almost nothing your exposure. What was written, whether you believe it or not, it's fine, it's okay. Additionally, Journal of Air and Waste Management Association, for example, they said if you're at a sidewalk cafe and you sit within 18 inches of a person who smokes 2 cigarettes over the course of an hour, your exposure to secondhand smoke could be the same as if you sat for 1 hour inside a tavern with smokers. The question here is, if there's just one smoker and you can sit 6 feet away, it would have a little problem. If you're a non-smoker and you see somebody smoking, why do you walk up next to them? I would suggest that this law, let's talk about litter for a moment, banning smoking in the parks doesn't stop anyone from smoking. It just means the litter is going to be someplace else. I'd like for the legislation to actually serve some purpose other than essentially limiting people who we've admittedly acknowledged don't smoke purposely. They would prefer not to and can't get off of it. And not allowing them an opportunity to go to the park seems pretty extreme when there's actually no real additional safety provided for anyone. Our parks are big, okay? If somebody's sitting at Shoreline Park fishing, those little perches, the perches themselves are 50 feet apart and seat 1 or 2 people where people fish. If you ever go down there, it's big. If you look at Surf's Up, I don't think you can put enough people in there to where you're unless you're having a big event that would suggest that you're exposed to smoke. There's nothing that's been presented that suggests that in our parks that our children are unnecessarily exposed. Everybody talks about what they don't want to happen to their kids. The reality is we don't have a situation where your children are being endangered by secondhand smoke. Essentially, invoking this ban on what limited evidence and shaky grounds you have, which is essentially that a lot of people don't like it, might seem effective in the short run, but it's hazardous for us as policymakers, for whom the people trust is essential. When you start making rules because it irritates smoking haters, as opposed to evidence that actually accomplishes anything, I would suggest that when we talk about secondhand smoke, both my parents smoke, none of my brothers do. I would suggest that entire generation that went through the Camels, Marlboro Man, all the above. We've extended the life expectancy of human beings by 20 years, in spite of intense exposure to secondhand smoke in our homes. So I understand you can get excited about this, but the reality is this law does not do any of the things you think, other than, doesn't do anything really constructive that justifies telling veterans who got hooked on cigarettes, giving you the right to have all of this, and now all of a sudden they aren't welcome. I look at AMVET's park that's on here. The AMVET's sponsor, they painted the AMVET's field and cleaned up the field for us. And now those guys, and it's statistical, 30% of veterans as a whole are hooked on tobacco. That's a study I can show you that I read. It may be untrue. Additionally, and if you break it down by age groups, it says up to 56% for the younger veterans as do. So I would suggest that we need to make sure we're really getting something out of this. That your kids are going to be. It's not our purpose of this government to set examples for your children at the expense of people who want to use the parks. The concept of we're going to ban smoking in the parks, and all of a sudden this is because it will influence your children not to smoke. I think it's a step too far. I would suggest we have no obligation to create policies that simply protect cigarette haters from irritation. You've offered nothing here that suggests any individual kids are overly exposed to smoke in all of these parks named. There's ways to narrow it down, and we could do it. At the ballparks, if you put up, and we don't even need legislation, you can put a sign up, because we can make park regulations that say no smoking in the bleachers. It's a place where people are crammed together. They have no ability to get away. Now, down the left field line, sitting in my car, we shouldn't be writing that kind of a policy. So I'll just leave it at that and call it a day.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
This commission has committed hundreds of thousands of dollars to playground equipment in many of our parks. And the legislation that we're considering tonight is probably more meaningful than all those dollars put together. You don't have to look any further than the statistics on infant mortality and what smoking, secondhand smoking, does to raise that number in infant mortality. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and tonight I'm going to vote for her.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd. Oh, no, she spoke once, and you spoke once. Okay. Ms. Lloyd.
just to bring up one more item that came from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, is breathing drifting tobacco smoke for even brief periods can be deadly. Also, drifting tobacco smoke, even outdoors, can trigger asthmatic attacks, bronchial infections, and other serious health problems in non-smokers. And knowing that almost 100 million Americans who have asthma and chronic bronchitis and other breathing issues, like it's just not good for them to be around secondhand smoke. And when we talk about playgrounds versus the rest of the park, children are very, very important in this legislation, but our active community for runners, if they're running on the piers, which is a very common thing that they do, if a fisherman is there, and I hope that they always will be there, I talk to them when I'm running by, and if they're smoking there, if an asthmatic is running by them, that could trigger an asthma attack. So with that, and then with the suggestion on adding e-cigarettes to the legislation, I'd like to make a motion to amend the legislation to create a tobacco and vape-free environment, not only in the parks, but piers, plazas, and the bike path.
So there is a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. So the issue under, the motion under discussion is the motion to amend. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion to amend? I support the motion in part, but not in entirety. I support the motion as to adding vaping, but I find the piers to be a unique place. And so I don't support that. Additional, Mr. Lockhart.
Mr. Chairman, could you clarify what you just said in regards to the pier or?
What I said is I support extending it to vaping, but not extending it to the piers.
The pier is a park.
Well, I don't support that part of the motion.
I'm failing to see how that would fall out of the grand scheme of things. If we're banning it in all parks and the pier will be a park, how does that?
I'm just explaining my rationale. You may see it differently, Mr. Lockhart.
Well, I'm just saying.
Does that mean no? Does that mean no?
Does that mean no?
It means I'm voting no on the motion.
All right. All right. Just want to make sure.
Additional comments on the motion to amend. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion to amend?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
Mr. Murray?
No.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That amendment becomes part of the legislation. Additional comments on the legislation.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lockhart.
So far, what I've seen is the suggestion that other places are doing things in legislation. Well, let's see. Las Vegas came up with casinos, and many other states came up with casinos far before Ohio did. Proved to be a kind of a bad thing in some places. Prostitution is also legal in some other places. Should we vote that in the Sandusky so we can keep up with everybody else? Also, alcohol was prohibited one time and then brought back. Seems to be the most dangerous thing. Here's an interesting fact about alcohol I learned. The opiate epidemic, that alcohol can be far more dangerous and killing than opiates. If someone is incarcerated, our local jails have to keep a certain amount of alcohol so that person won't die because of the withdrawals from alcohol, different from opiates where they will just simply recover somewhat from the opiate epidemic, or opiates, I'm saying. And when we talk about legislation, the funny thing is, we allow chickens here in the city, but they don't allow chickens other places. So it's not about catching up. It's about, let me bring it back to you. Let me bring it back home. Smoking is not necessarily a good thing. Just like some of the way people drive cars and other things. It's not about that. It's about the choice that we have and what we're doing to impose that on other people. We are about to impose a lifestyle on other people in this community. We're passing a law that we have to know that has equity, that everyone wants this law imposed upon them. That's what I'm talking about here. So when you talk about the people that live here, let's look down here. When I believe someone mentioned kids. We pass laws so that in the future it benefits those that come after us, right? I understand that. But the people that built this community live right here on these parks. If you notice that how many senior buildings are outside this place, all those seniors that lived here, that paid their taxes, that were here for 50 or 60 or 70 years, that they creep out of their buildings slowly and they go to the park and sit and fish. So you're telling me they don't have just as much as right to come out and sit there and have a cigarette that they've lived here all their life? Everybody in this room is going to be a senior citizen at one point. And some young whippersnapper is going to come through and tell you, you can't do that. We don't like the way your cane looks. We just outlaw brown canes, brown shoes. We're going to do that to the people in the future, right? Is that what we're saying? Is that what we're saying? I don't believe in this. That's all I'm saying.
Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the legislation, please?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
No.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
No.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That passes on first reading. And that concludes our regular items of business, and we turn now to Mr. Wolfster for his report.
Thank you, commissioners, audience, and staff. I'd like to start with donations. First, a $50 donation to the Kenny Jensen Memorial Tree Fund was received from Fresh Hair Design. I ask for a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Been a motion, second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks.
Also, I'd like to take note that the 2018 Service Ohio Award for Northwest Ohio will be presented to Christine Besch and Kendra Faulkner on April 20th. Each year, the Ohio Commission on Service and Volunteerism honors an individual or organization in each geographical region of the state. And OGO, as represented by Ms. Besch and Ms. Faulkner, will be representing Northwest Ohio. They're the first winner in Erie County, and obviously this commission has supported their work, been a very early supporter of their work, and Dave brought this to our attention. So we just wanted to congratulate them and commend the commission for supporting them early, and to see that the state is recognizing the important work they're doing in the community. Also, moving on to the administration. As you are aware, Commission recently voted to enter into a 3-year contract with First Energy Solutions as the city's residential and small commercial electric supplier. On March 31st, First Energy Solutions voluntarily filed petitions under the Federal Bankruptcy Code for a Chapter 11 financial restructuring. We have been assured that this financial restructuring will not affect our contract nor its original terms. Any questions or concerns should be directed to Assistant Law Director Trevor Hayberger at 419-627-5852. Additionally, tomorrow, on Tuesday, April 10th, the Sandusky Library will be unveiling its bicentennial traveling exhibit at 3:30 p.m. at the library. The community is welcome to attend. On Wednesday, April 18th, the next bicentennial Banter History Series takes place. This month's discussion will cover Jay Cook, an influential Sandusky native who went on to help shape the United States during the Civil War. It will be at 6 p.m. at the Sandusky State Theater on Wednesday, April 18th. And finally, as it relates to the bicentennial, Heritage Sundays will begin on Sunday, April 22nd. These special Sundays are an initiative of our faith-based community to get involved in the bicentennial and to invite the community into their sanctuaries. There will be historic exhibits, architectural discussions, and open houses. Please see the bicentennial website, sandusky2018.com, to see which churches are participating in Heritage Sundays. Moving on to the police department. The Sandusky Police Department donated an Easter basket that was raffled off at the Easter egg hunt. A special thank you to Chief Orzak, Sergeant Susanna, and Officer Rankins for donating the items for the basket. Also, the 2017 awards banquet was held on April 4th. Citizens and officers received recognition for their contributions to the department and community for the year 2017. Congratulations to Officer Ed Olemacher, who received the Officer of the Year award. Detective Ron Brotherton was also recognized with the Chief's Award for his efforts combating the drug issues in our community. The City of Sandusky is offering full testing services for the position of police officer through the National Testing Network. Testing period is April 9th through May 31st. To fill out an application and schedule a written test, go to nationaltestingnetwork.com. Select law enforcement and sign up for the Sandusky Police Department. You must register prior to reporting to the testing facility. The closest testing locations are Yehovah Career Center and Owens Community College. Moving on to finance. The city was selected for a pension audit with the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System for the year 2017 by the State Auditor's Office. There were no issues noticed. The State Auditor's Office will release the audit report in the next several weeks. Moving on to Public Works. Sandusky was named a 2017 Tree City by the Arbor Day Foundation in honor of its commitment to effective urban forest management. An award ceremony will take place on May 8th in Avon Lake, and several members of the city's tree commission will attend. Also, crews at Oakland Cemetery will be conducting spring cleanup on Wednesday, April 18th. All items placed at grave sites during the fall and winter months will be removed, and no artificial flowers will be permitted for spring and summer months. Finally, contractors for the following projects are currently remobilizing for completion of punch list items that were on hold due to winter weather. Lions Park improvements, the number 14 Cedar Point lift station replacement, the Lincoln Street utility replacement, and the 2017 sidewalk program. Moving on to the Department of Community Development, the revolving loan fund. In March of this year, the city received approximately $70,000 in revolving loan fund repayments that resulted in 2 loans being paid in full. These repayments came from Ability Works for approximately $67,000 and Eric's Clothing and Culture for $3,000. The city wants to thank both entities for their past investments and wishes them both continued success into the future. At 3704 Venice Road, the former Silas Auto Group building, the city's building division and fire department issued demolition orders to the property based on a result of an inspection in late December 2017. As a result, the property owners hired a private contractor to complete the demolition work. To date, the property is demolished and on the ground, and crews are removing debris from the site. And I noticed this firsthand over the weekend, so thank you for that, Mr. Lasko. A special thank you to the Building Division and Fire Department for their work in securing voluntary compliance and removing this blighted property from Venice Road. And then an Economic Development Capital Projects Funds update. The city has once again received overwhelming interest and participation in our economic development programs. As of April 1st, only approximately $90,000 uncommitted funding remains from the original $150,000 in program funds for this year. The interest in the program and types of projects seeking funding is a testament to the continued economic growth and reinvestment the city of Sandusky and the region is experiencing. Projects interested in receiving funds for 2018 are encouraged to submit applications as quickly as possible, and funding is expected to be fully committed in May or June of this year. Moving on to the Planning Department. The regular Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 25th at 4:30 p.m. in the first floor conference room. A Landmark Commission meeting has not yet been scheduled for April, and the regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 19th. The normal time of the meeting, 4:30, has been moved to 3 p.m. So on Thursday, April 19th, the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting will take place at 3 p.m. in the Commission chambers. And finally, for recreation, Spring Break Camp was a huge success, with nearly 100 kids in grades K through 12 participating each day. A special thank you to all of the volunteers, including police and fire, for taking time out of their busy schedules to spend time with the kids. Also, thank you to Sandusky City Schools and the many area businesses that donated time and services, including lunches for the campers. The camp ended with the unveiling of the special bicentennial art project, which can be viewed in my office at the reception desk. That concludes my remarks for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witcher. Commissioners, questions or comments for the city manager?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Waddington.
Any updates on the police department? I get questioned on that a lot, and I'm sure the other commissioners do.
Through the commission president to Commissioner Waddington, we're very detailed end of the process of analyzing the properties that have been listed as the finalists. While there are some complications with those, we hope to be able to work through those quickly and to pull the selection committee back together within the next 30 days to hopefully recommend a final decision.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments for the city manager? I'm glad we're going to have an answer pretty soon. I really like participating in the police officers' Sandusky Police Department's awards dinner, but by the end there, we barely got out without committing to a location and opening date. In all seriousness, Chief, it was a special evening to be able to share with your officers, to see the camaraderie. And I didn't mention this that evening when I spoke to them, but I want to say it now. We have a tendency to lionize the police department and police officers as though they're all superhuman. They're not. They're people. They have foibles. They make mistakes. They're just like the rest of us. And the fact that you can do what you do is all the more amazing because it's because of the camaraderie that the officers share, and it's because of leadership that you and others provide. And so we are very grateful for what you do for our community and what all of your officers do. We were really impressed by the turnout at the Easter egg hunt. And I want to thank Mr. Waddington for again serving as the Easter Bunny this year. How he gets into that, I don't know.
The bunny that limped?
Additional questions or comments for the city manager? If not, then we will turn to old business. Anyone having any items of old business? Any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brady.
I would like to make a motion for one executive session for personnel to discuss a promotion.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Presser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
That executive session is set. Any other items of new business? Mr. Wobser, I think it might be important to note, because as we are approaching a new season with our parks you have placed in the budget, which the commission has passed, additional park seasonal employees to be able to, hopefully this year, keep up with that level of maintenance that the public would really like to see in the parks, and I applaud you for hiring those additional folks and getting that into the budget. There are a lot of demands in the budget, but I think it's important to take care of that, too. Yes, sir.
Through the commission president, your remarks reminded Commission Clerk Crusser that we're all, speaking of the parks and the upgrades as well as the maintenance, that we do have planned a ribbon cutting for the new Foxborough play area that will take place at Wednesday, April 8th at 5 p.m. at Foxborough Park. I'm sorry, April 18th at 5 p.m. at Foxborough Park. We'll be issuing a press release, I believe, this week on that as well. So, but absolutely, we'll do our best to continue to maintain and improve the maintenance of the parks.
Any other items of new business? If not, then we'll turn to audience participation. Anyone wish to address the commission on any matter of city business? Please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Mike Zolhoff, Market Street, Sandusky. You know, I'm feeling kind of proud of the city right now. The smoking thing kind of has been, the hallmark of it's been restraint and respectful discourse, and mostly absence of sanctimony, and just the kind of discussion that makes you feel good about people being deliberative and in making their decisions. So I can't say that it's all been like that, but it's kind of a neat thing. It's not going to. This isn't going to cost as much. It's got downsides. It's got advantages. You can. I'm pretty sure everybody's already made up their mind, but in the meantime, I think it's a healthy discussion to have. I can live with either outcome. I can't be objective about it. I watched my father suffocate after 45 years of smoking. I endured a lot of secondhand smoke because he was a heavy smoker. He was proud of me when I started filching his cigarettes at age 14. I had the good sense to quit by the time I was 23 or so. I'm probably feeling some health effects from that as well. But I hope to live a little longer than he did. But in any event, it's a challenging thing, and it won't cost as much. There are other health things we can take action on and take advantage of in promoting the health of our community. Some of you might have suffered from, I like to, every once in a while I'll share an article that I think is important. It might have been a New York Times article that I really didn't intend for it to go out at 4:30 in the morning. I sent out a New York Times article on the health hazards of lead. There's some, so I apologize if I woke anybody up. But I'm also kind of old school because I have the tendency, to think of sending an email as equivalent to dropping a mail in the mailbox. And of course, the world's changing, and I too now get a audible alert if I forget to put my phone to sleep at night anytime an email comes in. So sorry about that. But in any event, I think it was an important article because most people think about lead as a neurological hazard, in particular to children. But it's not just that. The research is starting to show that a whole lot of heart disease is caused by lead, and that we now know that there is no safe amount of lead. We used to think that if we reduced it, it would help, and it does help, but every molecule of lead bouncing around your body does damage. And this is a tougher one because it's really expensive to really do something about lead, and that's why we keep kicking the can down the road. The sources of lead we have, when baby boomers were young, cars were spewing lead because that's how we improved the quality of gasoline, right? We got smart about that. It took us a while, but we slowly got lead out of house paint incrementally. But we're still suffering from that, and it's still expensive and difficult to mitigate that, and we'll be suffering from that as long as those houses stand, inside and outside. But we can do things about that. And in this city, we have water lines, we have an infrastructure issue. Water lines that still include lead components. They have other issues too. We have water mains to houses that are still made of lead. We have houses that are full of lead soldered copper plumbing. And so I'm not going to pretend that there's an easy answer. One might ask, what are we going to do about this? I'm just going to implore you to make sure that your management and the city doesn't miss a chance to push the health district, support the health district, make investments to improve that the lead hazard, mitigate and reduce the lead hazard. It's also an infrastructure issue. A lot of the water lines, the older water lines, need replacement anyway. Okay, and so part and parcel of that is then new taps, new connections. We're probably, in the off-season, I'd be surprised if half the water that we make at the plant doesn't go to leakage. But, you know, when the consumption is down in the winter, you're probably less than half is actually being consumed by your customers, and probably more than half is leaking. So, you know, do we have the capacity? Sure, we can handle that, but your consumables go up. Your carbon, your alum, your energy at the plant all increase, you know, and that's all waste. You know, is it going to pay off? No. Is it an easy solution? I don't know. I don't know enough about how to fix it, but I do think that it's really easy to just forget about it for another year, and it's much harder to come up with a plan to make sure that every citizen in this city doesn't endure the health hazards of one molecule of lead that they don't need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. Mr. Klein, just briefly, could you confirm? I believe we have no lead pipes anywhere in the city of Sandusky, and I don't mean to contradict, because I'm not. What Mr. Duloff was speaking to was the pipes that go from the city's pipe. This is a homeowner's pipe, and in years past they were often lead. Sometimes, well, some of them are still in use, but very often, I mean, what happens is, in fact, almost all the time, the chemicals that we use to treat the water include something that essentially seals that off. So it's only if it's bumped or the wrong chemicals are put in, as happened in Flint, Michigan, that causes that corrosive protective layer to be eroded away. And then I believe that our water loss is closer to 15%, which is in line with national averages. And any comments on that, Mr. Klein?
Just one comment on the water loss. It is something that I'd like to give credit to our water distribution guys over the past year. They've done an amazing job on catching up with work orders that they've had that have been out there for the last couple of years, and that's a direct reflection of the leadership that Scott Cromer's shown. And they've caught up on a lot of those water loss issues. So it has been in the 20s range, but you know, we have a lot of anticipation of trying to get that as low as we possibly can. So it is right around the national average. We have to keep track of all those things. We have meters on the city buildings, you know, it's those types of things. So yeah, and you are accurate with the lead. Our city mains do not have lead joints or lead mains or anything along those lines. It's the service line that goes from the main on private property to the house.
Thank you. Platt.
My name is Marcy Platt. I live at 1217 Columbus Avenue. I just heard you guys vote on the smoking thing, and I'm really confused on what you voted on. First of all, Ms. Lloyd said that, first of all, you're not supposed to be voting on the Jack Street Pier, and you're not supposed to be voting on Shoreline Drive, the park, because of your proximity to your business. So that would have to, in order for you to vote, those two would have to be stricken out, I believe, or something. Justin would know what she would need to do about that.
She's allowed to vote on that.
Why would she be allowed to do that?
Because through you, Chair, this is a piece of legislation that affects every single park in the city of Sandusky. So by virtue of your analysis, everybody would have some sort of property located on or near a park.
But do they? Does everybody own a business near a park?
What I'm saying is this doesn't specifically affect her business. It affects 26,000 residents of the city of Sandusky. They ran it by me, and they're allowed to vote on it.
Okay. The question I have, Ms. Lloyd, is you said that you would like to see it just enforced person to person. The legislation says it would be a minor misdemeanor. Is that what you want the legislation to read as? Would it be a warning first?
Ms. Platt, just make your comments and.
Okay, I'm just wondering, because I read the legislation, it says minor misdemeanor. What I heard Ms. Lloyd say is she just wants kind of neighbor to tell the other person that they're out of compliance with the regulation. Then, Mr. Murray, I heard you say that you don't want it for the piers, but it's okay for the parks. So it would be nice if it was tidied up so that everybody was voting on the same thing. Is it an enforceable minor misdemeanor, or is it just a warning to each other? Is it piers, parks, or whatever? The other question I have for you, Mr. Orzak, is if somebody overdoses on the pier on heroin, are they charged?
Chief, this is, just go ahead and make your
Okay,
comments, please.
my question is, you overdose on heroin on the pier, you're not charged. If you smoke a cigarette on the pier, you can be charged with possible minor misdemeanor. That's a big reach. I just think that people should think about that maybe there's an overreach. I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker. So it really doesn't matter to me. But I think that if you're going to have bars where people are smoking out in front of the bars, and people are not allowed to smoke on, it's in the law, they are not allowed to smoke on balconies that are adjacent to it, that are connected to it, that if we're going to do that, we need to enforce it there too. And as a taxpayer, I don't want my money going into people enforcing whether somebody's smoking on the outside of the bar or if there's somebody being shot in the city of Sandusky. We have very real crime in Sandusky. We have very real drug problems that need to be addressed. I don't think that we should be addressing whether somebody smokes cigarettes or not. That's their decision. It is their right. And people can go 6 feet, 25 feet, but this has already been argued in front of you guys years ago, and you came to the recommendation of 25 feet. So why not just leave it there? And in fact, probably this location, as someone brought up, is in violation right now because you don't have the smoking area is not the required 50 feet. And as someone who counsels veterans, I'm right on you with Mr. Poole, that many people get addicted to cigarettes while they're out in the field because there's nothing for them to do. And so they start smoking cigarettes and they start doing whatever. And actually, anybody that has a business that is in violation of where their container is to smoke, any of them can get a $100 fine through the Department of Health. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Platt. Swindow.
One quick comment.
Would you state your name and address, please, sir?
My name is Ed Window, 420 Bay Breeze Drive, Sandusky. One quick comment, and this has nothing to do with the smoking, which seems to be a very hot issue tonight. This has to do with Mike's comments on the lead. I think the city deserves credit on their approach to this lead, and I'm involved with 2 projects where they're going to put new streets in, curbs and sidewalks. And before, years ago, we'd put new streets and sidewalks in, but currently what we're doing, or on these 2 projects, we're removing the lead lines between the mains and the meter pits. We are replacing the lines so that when we put our new street in, it doesn't get water leaks. We're replacing the sewer lines on these projects. So we're eliminating a lot of that process. Also, the city deserves credit not only for that issue on the lead, but also their inspection departments that do the housing inspections are very thorough in making sure that all the plumbing that is installed has all lead-free products that are being used. And you have to have that in your specifications, and you have to have it presented at the site when the plumbing inspector does those specs. So I think they deserve credit because they are on the upswing on this. I mean, they could put streets and leave the old stuff in, but they're not. So I think that's admirable, and I think they would be commended for their approach to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Window. Anyone else?
Hi, everyone. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I agree. I'm totally against. I'm totally.
Oh, your name and address,
I'm
please,
sorry.
sir. I'm sorry.
My name's Deshaun Bethia. I live across the street at Bayshore Tower at 120 Perry, apartment 1203. I'm totally for the non-smoking ban. I don't want to offend anybody that smokes. I have no problem with them at all, personally. But I have asthma, and even when I go to Cedar Point, I'm waiting in line for a coaster. And they're vaping in my face, they're smoking. They tell me to go in designated areas. They get upset, but I have it in my building where they put a no smoking ban in Bayshore Tower. I think all area Metro Housing is doing this, and I've been to the meeting there on the committee room. No smoking will be allowed in the building starting in July, and they're trying to help people that is on smoke, that's smoking, get off of it. But it comes to my apartment, no matter what I do, open the windows, try to put something at the edge of the door from keeping it coming in. It comes in, and so I'm totally for the no smoking ban, and hope everybody can agree to something, a balance in there. I pray for the people that are smoking, because we care for each other.
Thank you,
Just wanted
sir.
to say that, guys.
Thanks for being here. I don't think I've seen you before, so thanks for being here.
I've tried to come to more city initiatives.
Good. Okay, good.
Robin Hudnall, 511 West Washington Street. I'm going to make this really, really quick. Just one thing came to mind, and I do not know Mr. Poole or Mr. Lockhart if you are veterans, but I've heard you both bring up the word veterans, and I heard you bring up the word veterans, but that doesn't speak for every veteran, because I am a wartime veteran. I served, I've been through it, and I live with it every day, and I know what I fought for. And I'm telling you what, it wasn't about just smoking. It was everybody's right for everything. As my right as a parent, as my right as a smoker. You have to take one with the other. The importance, the health and safety and well-being of our children, our community, takes precedence over everything. And that is why we are not allowed to drink alcohol outside of regulated places. That is why when I took my children to the pier, I had to leave. Because my daughter, it was the 4th of July, almost got burnt. I was upset. It was ridiculous to take my kids fishing. So, being that said, if you are going to have an issue, please, you're not speaking for all veterans. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudnall.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
Miss, to answer your question, yes, I am a veteran. 23 years in the Army National Guard. I don't propose that I speak for veterans, for all veterans. I recognize, just to clarify for you, that veterans, I'm only talking about the denial of access to use the parks. And if I thought for a moment that Shoreline Park was not big enough for someone to smoke at one end and children to play at another, I would have voted to ban smoking. The fact of the matter is, what you folks are, what's been presented does not help your children any. It's just not, they're not in danger. I mean, I'm sorry if you're on the park and your daughter almost got burned, you didn't talk about the circumstances. But I would suggest that our parks are big enough that we should be able to allow all the citizens access to it. And if there's a problem, and had there actually been a real problem, folks whose children caught cancer from secondhand smoke in the parks, somebody would have been here before now and talked about it and described it in terms of experiences that they actually had that routinely occur at these parks. But the fact is, that's not what it is. Folks have seized an opportunity to pick out a group of people that have an affliction, an addiction, that they often can't do much about, and they're the minority. Simple as that. And so for that's why I voted no on this. I don't see any reason why there's not enough space in that park, in our parks, as little as they're used, that there's not room for everyone. And if there's a problem, somebody started a hassle with you and your child because you couldn't get away from them, they followed your child around with a cigarette, that would be a different story.
Okay, I think.
So that's it. So there you go.
So let me just make clear what I do at these meetings, so we have some consistency. If a particular commissioner comments are directed at a particular commissioner, I will usually recognize the commissioner if they wish to respond, but I don't want to relitigate issues that we've already talked about tonight. Yes, sir.
Kyle Johnson, 2020 Campbell Street. First and foremost, before I leave today, I do want to address that even I fully and wholeheartedly respect the opinions and the statistics that everybody has brought to the table today, even those of the commissioners, whether I agree or disagree on what you voted on. Ms. Lloyd, you brought up asthma. I know I'm only one person. I've grown up with asthma my entire life. In third grade, I literally, if I wouldn't have woke up when I did during the night, I literally could have died because of asthma attacks. I'm not afraid to admit I started smoking at 16, maybe 15 years old. I broke the law. I smoked. I'm healthy as a whistle. May not be able to run a 100-yard dash in 20 seconds, but hey, still get it done. I'm willing to bet that there's people out there that are, as you said, can cause an asthma attack or an allergic reaction to secondhand smoke. What about colognes and perfumes? I mean, is that going to be next on the ban list?
Smell bad.
I mean, me personally, I've been to the bar. I go out almost every weekend. I spritz myself. Hey, I like to smell good. I've had people come up to me and tell me, well, you need to get away from me. Your cologne's strong. Okay, that's fine. Now, I do want to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Justin Harris over here says that Ms. Lloyd was allowed to vote on it because the vote didn't particularly advocate to her business. If I recollect back last year, we voted on a fishing matter at the Paper District Marina, correct? President Murray, you abstained from the vote because you own a marina downtown. Even though that vote didn't go towards your specific marina, why does she still have the right to vote even though it's not directed toward her businesses? And that's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the commission?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. Through you, I will ask a couple questions on the Sandusky Shelby Street boat ramp, and then you could maybe have somebody answer the question. Probably last month, 2-3 weeks ago, we had a coffee with commissioners down at the Mr. Smith's Coffee House, and I suggested that maybe the city put just the ramps in at the boat ramp. None of the docks, but just the ramps, and I don't know if that's been done yet or not. I know Huron has had their ramps in since March, and their boat ramp on the weekend's been packed. I think we're losing an opportunity here in the city of Sandusky to take it. They are in? Okay, excellent, very much.
Wednesday, I'm sorry. I thought I saw them in the water.
Okay, this week? Very good, thank you. The other question, just for clarification, I want to go back to the lease with Block by Block. Is it my understanding then that this is just a one-year agreement? And then after that, we're going to go back to going out for proposals for somebody to actually run the ramp and use the building in which it was intended to be used for? Is that my understanding?
That wasn't in the legislation, but.
Okay.
My hope.
Okay, so another part of the confusion is, did we go out for proposals this year from other entities that may be interested in running the ramp this year as a ramp, including the building? Do we know that?
I believe the answer to that is no.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything on the smoking ban because I don't want to waste my breath because.
Mr. Lockhart, you had something you wanted to say?
Oh, yeah. In reference to Ms. Hudall, our job is to find a common ground for everybody here. It's not to say that one veteran is right and one veteran is not wrong, or wrong, but we have to make sure there's a parity for everyone here and everybody's represented. And this, again, I reiterate, is, the reason why I talk about putting this out to the voters so that people just like yourself has an opportunity to vote just like everybody else, because it's everybody's park, not just one or the other. So you're just as right as the next person. So we rule by the majority.
Mr. Johnson.
Sharon Johnson, 1139 Fifth Street. I'm not talking about the smoking. I want to change the subject onto the streets of this town. I'd like to know if the city can get up some kind of a task force for the streets to keep the ball rolling on getting some streets done in this town, aggressively and seriously attacking this. We cannot look the other way anymore. And I'll tell you why. I sat in on a meeting at the Pathway meeting, and they were telling me that pathway, there's miles of pathway at about $1 million to do or more. I took a slow burn on that. I don't know how the city can rate a pathway over the streets in this town as a priority. I'm on the CDBG, and the draft came out. There's no local streets being done except for $725,000 coming out of CDBG funds for the pier and shoreline and along the shoreline. Nothing locally. Last year we had about $365,000 we put in streets, which hardly was anything. Streets are expensive. They cost nearly $1 million to do or more if you have sewer and water, curbing and gutter. It all depends. I was also told, and I didn't know this, that CDBG will not pave just a street. It has to be a full construction of the street. You mean to tell me we are not shovel-ready for something like that? I'm sickened by it. Sickened to hear that it cost about $1 million a mile for a pathway, and we're doing that over the streets in this town. I've had more repairs on my car, and it's the same repair over and over. It's embarrassing. You can put lipstick on a pig downtown there. You can make that downtown a Taj Mahal. But what about the rest of the city? We have got to get aggressive. We've got to have an aggressive plan for the streets, and I want to know what you're doing to bring the streets up to par. Don't sit there and not say anything. I want an answer.
Anything else, Mr. Johnson?
That's my answer. Thank you. That's a shame. I'm embarrassed for my city that they will put millions of dollars into a pathway and we don't get nothing in streets.
Ma'am?
First off, my name is Carol Hay. I live over on Hayes Avenue. I made a mention to our city manager and another particular woman in here that I would never come to another city commissioner's office meeting again. I changed my mind. I said you couldn't pull enough teeth to make me come in here because of the bull crap that I have gotten thrown at me from different departments since I made a couple mentions before. The young lady that just spoke had said she's ashamed of the city. I can't say I'm ashamed of the city, but if somebody wants to buy me out, please just give me enough money I can go elsewhere. Because when we can sit here and talk about something that you can buy at every store, cigarettes, if you're of age, most cigarette smokers that are of age are respectful because of the state law that went into effect. They realize there is dangers of secondhand smoke. You've put it in for the children at the parks. But what you didn't do was sit and look at this stuff and the recommendations. Now FDA's going in saying vaping might not be so good. The way I read the papers and stuff, you guys still allow vaping around the children. Vaping causes spots on your lungs, like bubbles on your insides of your lungs. The FDA's doing a lot. None of that is being regulated. A lot of it's coming from China, tin, aluminum, everything is in the vapors stuff. I want to thank the police department and all the first responders for the excellent job that they are trying to do If you all up here, I thank you very much for taking care of the playgrounds for the children, no smoking. But how about the no vaping? Because now the kids, that's what they're picking up. If you read the articles, they're picking up the vaping. You're letting the kids here in this city vape, the people vape around the children. So it's showing them vaping's okay, but smoking's not.
Mr. Chairman,
Floyd.
that's the amendment we made, was to add a vape-free environment.
Oh, I wasn't here for that because I debated and I drug feet to try to even debate whether I even was coming.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I want to know how many more police officers are going on patrol, how many more is going to be hired, how many more police officers, if this goes through, how many more police officers does this commission want to hire in to go out and be smoke patrol policemen? They have enough to do. I'm picking up Hensley bottles, liquor bottles, needles, condom wrappers, and I live on a main street. I've had the police come by my places when the places was dumping stuff in the yards to say, can you do anything to figure out what it is? Nobody wants to inspect it and see what it is. That's okay. Let it just, my people don't come to my house anymore. I can't have my grandbabies there. When they do, they sit in the front yard or right there on the front step we sit in case they have to go, or we'll sit in their car. Because I'll be danged if I'm going to sit there and watch my children and my grandbabies have to watch grown men with their pants down to their 3/4 of the way down their thing going down a main street, hitting on a crack pipe, and then going right over here on a main street and dealing drugs. And now at night you go flashing your lights and flashing your lights. And that's okay if that's the atmosphere they want to go, Miss Lloyd. That's what the police are for, the illegal things, not things where you're wanting to limit people that you can go legally and buy cigarettes. You can go legally and buy alcohol, but you're supposed to be respectful of the places. The Ohio City or the Ohio State already took it and voted and said 25 feet from a building. The first time I loved an article in the Sandusky Register for quite a while, first front page news of the Sandusky Saturday's paper, where the Erie Metro Parks was asked if this passes for the smoking, no smoking, at the Jackson Pier or anywhere else in the parks, are they going to follow suit? Page A7 or whatever it was says, the main guy says, we haven't had enough complaints, or we haven't had complaints. Have you had a lot of complaints? A lot of complaints. How many citizens are in this city? Do you know? How many citizens do we hold within the city walls? 25,000. Quite a few. Have we had 5,000 complaints? I feel sorry for the police department if this passes through, because what are they supposed to do? Arrest the person that's going to abduct that young child over there that's just getting ready to go in on her or him like an eagle and pick up that child and take it wherever? Or are they not going to be able to see that because they got to pay attention to smoking? Excuse me, but thank you for your time. Thank you, officers.
Anyone else wishing to address the commission?
That was fun. Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. Everyone that's 5 years old knows smoking is icky. Everyone that's 10 years old knows smoking will make you sick. And everyone that's 16 years old that knows smoking will kill you. Miss Lloyd stacked the house today with all her friends and people that brought in all the percentages and all that stuff. If you smoke, percentages don't matter to you. You're either enjoying it and don't care, or you're trying to quit and trying to find help that way. And I would rather see, if we're going to put anything toward anything, I'd rather see the city putting help toward that, because percentages don't matter. I stated earlier that I grew up with smokers, and they're all gone. None of them died from cigarettes. They all died from old age, including my grandmother, who was 103. Not saying that you're going to live to be 103 if you all smoke, because you won't. But what she was stating, they were talking, it was an article in a newspaper, Osborne Park stated that they aren't going to enforce any kind of no smoking outside of the building. They don't have any complaints on it, and they don't have any problems with it. Is this, when you there's been so much about cigarettes being bad for you over the last 40 years. When we're out in a public place, a baseball game or anything else, anyone that smokes knows it's bad for them. They know it's bad for other people, and most of the ones that I've seen will be courteous enough to get up and walk out of the bleachers and go have a cigarette under a tree. And they stay away from children. I haven't seen any, but then again, I don't hang around smokers, but the ones that I've seen that smoke have been courteous enough to not involve people around them. Are you going to go around tapping bikers on their back and saying, sorry, you can't smoke in downtown during Ohio Bike Week? You have festival in town. You're planning on turning Jackson Street Pier into Put-in Bay. Are you going to walk around there during all these festivals, patting people on the shoulder and saying, sorry, you can't smoke down here? Oh, okay. They're going to leave. And that's money. I know a lot of people don't like Bike Week because it's loud, it's noisy. When you have the festivals, you block off streets downtown and people are irritated with that. But it brings money into here, and if I had a child that had asthma, I would stay someplace where there's no one smoking. It's a big park. All of the parks are big parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Hi, Erica Coleman, 5214 McCartney Road. I just wanted to address a few things. The lady who just spoke before me mentioned that Ms. Lloyd stacked the room or whatever with people who came with data. I actually watched the video of, I believe, the meeting that you all had on the 26th, and Mr. Lockhart, I believe you had said that you felt in order to move forward with something like this that you needed to see data and we needed to talk about statistics and things of that nature. So I think if anything, we should probably thank Ms. Lloyd for bringing in someone who has education and knowledge of the statistics and data behind this. And also, people who are for the smoking ban are, and this has been said several times, even by some of the commissioners, we're not saying you can't come to a park. We're not saying you can't fish. We're not saying that, and those words have been said. You're going to tell a smoker who is a veteran and whatnot that they can't come to a park. No one has said that at all. We're just saying that if you are going to come to the park, you cannot emit a poisonous substance that is harmful to other people. That's it. That's it. No one said you can't come to the park, then you can't fish. We're just saying that when you come, that voluntary action that you do when you put that poison in your body, we don't want you putting that in our body. That's all for that. Also, too, we've also been referred to as tobacco haters. I think that just really promotes conflict amongst our group. Several of us on both sides have gotten up here and said, thankful for all of us to really talk this issue through. I grew up with smokers my whole life. I just chose not to smoke. That's just nature and nurture, whatever you want to call it. But I don't not care for my family any less. I don't not respect your rights. You do have rights. I'm just saying our rights shouldn't impede on each other, especially when we're harming each other's health. So to call us tobacco haters, don't buy into that. We all got to work together. That's all we're saying. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the commission? And we will take a 3-minute recess.
Deshawn.